Hello lovely people, and welcome back to what's going to be my March happies. So we are a quarter of the way through the year, 3 months done, and I wanted to talk about how March went and what I've been enjoying, some things that happened, some things that weren't quite so good in March as well. It was an interesting month, let's just say that. Probably the most important thing of the whole of March, well, not probably, it was Tilly's birthday. My eldest turned 15 in the middle of the month. We had a wonderful time, party games, we had lots of cake. It was fantastic. She had a wonderful time. She was busy making some crafts for me, which I promised I would show, which are to go into my journal, and journaling was a big part of March for me as well. So birthdays and journals and art, it was lovely. So Tilly was 15, which is a big milestone. So that was the most important thing about March. Also, schools reopened again. The kids went back to school after our third lockdown. So it was just nice to put some normality into the mix after over 12 months now of horrendous news here in the UK. I got my first COVID shot as well, which made me quite poorly. It put me in bed as much as a single mom can be put in bed. It put me off my feet for a good 36 hours, I would say. So that was interesting, but I am so grateful for getting the vaccine. I didn't realise how much pressure I felt as a single mom in sole charge of being responsible for 3 little souls and 2 rescue dogs, being responsible for keeping our home ticking over. Just that first shot eased a lot of worry and panic for me that I don't think I'd realised was actually there. So I was really grateful for that, and I get my second shot in May. So yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Also, my YouTube channel hit 1,000 subscribers. Well, all the way through March, it was really odd. My subscriber count through March went crazy. I don't know whether it was being prompted by being near the 1,000 mark, but it kept going up and down and up and down and up and down. So I actually hit 1,000 subscribers, I think about 20 times. It was going crazy, it really was. So that was interesting to watch. But the thought that I've got 1,000 people on here, it just completely blows my mind. I said at the time that when I put my community post up, because I got my community post, which I love, I said that for ages, when I first started uploading videos, I had 5 subscribers. I never thought anybody would want to watch. I started uploading initially without even a thought to an audience at all. So to get to this point, I can't quite catch my breath that anybody is watching, but it is lovely and I am so grateful. So thank you so much for that. So things I've been doing, the weather has warmed up, thank goodness, although we've had snow here the last 2 days, just flurries of hail and then snow and then back to sunshine. It's the most insane April weather I've ever seen. But throughout March, you could feel spring had well and truly arrived. The daffodils were up, all the spring flowers were up. The weather was really quite warm on a lot of days. And the garden has been beckoning me again. Oh my gosh, I've loved my time in the garden. I did seed catalogue looking, seed ordering. I've been planting seeds up. The first shoots are beginning to show now in the greenhouse. I went plant shopping and I stocked up on compost and potting compost, getting ready and getting excited. Tilly's birthday presents, which if you watched the March garden video, you will have seen she put her birthday presents out in her secret garden, which she's loved doing. She's been helping me out there. The kids have got back up on the trampoline again. Oh, it just fills me with absolute joy getting out onto that trampoline and just playing in the garden. It's just wonderful. We've eaten out there. It's been fantastic. And flowers coming back, dirty fingernails, and just the possibility of a garden, the possibility that's held in planting seeds and dividing plants, and just even if I don't do anything, just watching to see what comes through again. It just feels to me like magic made concrete and tangible and touchable and plantable and movable. For me, the garden is real magic. And the woods as well. I have been fighting with a little bit of agoraphobia, not really serious, but I have been struggling with a little bit of agoraphobia. It's not helped by high stress levels in March. Not for any particular reason apart from 2020, 2021, a build-up, a worry. Like I said, getting my COVID shot made me realise how wound and tightly sprung I'd been, because the relief, I wasn't expecting to feel that level of relief. Getting out into the woods, even though it's not been every day, I'm beginning to venture back out again, which has been lovely. And the woods is a real source of peace and contentment for me. I have decided to do some walks without the dogs, because my dogs are beautiful and friendly and fun, but they're also lurchers, they're sight hounds, they race after things, they never run off, they always come back to me. But the level of the trouble you get into on a walk depends on how friendly the people or the dogs that they're running to are. Rupert's been bitten this year already. They do come back. They come back when I call, but they come back after they've said hello. So there is a high level of stress with me with walking my dogs, which for my own mental health at the minute, I've decided to try and put some walks out in nature without the dog. So a second walk just for me, because March saw the challenges in my life, which I can't do anything about. I can't change the challenges I've got. It's just the hand I've been dealt. Some of those challenges in March did spike my anxiety and my stress levels to the point that I ended up in hospital. So that was a big wake-up call for me in March. I think it was panic attacks. It was a baseline stress level that felt like a heart attack, basically, and I got admitted to hospital with a suspected heart attack. After repeat bloods and scans, it came back that it wasn't, no numbers were fluctuating, which would have been a sign of something really bad, like a heart attack having happened. But what did come back with the numbers and the bloods that they took was that my baseline level for stress was incredibly high. When quizzed by the doctors, he tried to explore some avenues of support for me. He realised, as I've done for many years, that doors are closed. There is no support for carers. There's very little support. I found it impossible to access that support. And he did wave me out of the hospital saying, I don't know what to suggest, which is unfortunately the sad state of affairs for a lot of carers in the UK. Funds are cut, support has been withdrawn, facilities are closed. 2020 and 2021 hasn't helped. But yeah, it's been a tough road for many people like myself who are full-time carers and are, I think, some of the forgotten people in this lockdown. And I'm not surprised that it pushed me to a point that I ended up in hospital. So where am I going forward with this? I'm looking to improving my health, making that a priority, improving my diet, improving ways of getting exercise that aren't stressful, like walking without the dogs. I have talked to a beautiful friend on the phone who I've met through YouTube, who we've talked about sleep and planning for sleep. Now the children are back at school for me. There are things going in place, and some of the things that trigger me and I panic about, I'm trying to let that go, because it was scary. It was scary thinking that there was something seriously wrong when I have so many people depending on me and there's no backup. So from now on this year, my health, my mental health, my stress levels are my priority. Asking for help. I have friends close by who tell me off for not reaching out. I haven't reached out for a long time. Just through life circumstance, I stopped trusting people to reach out and ask for help. However, this month, a friend came round and helped me with my taps. I'd got broken taps upstairs, which were keeping me awake as well, dripping in my ensuite. He came round and fixed taps, and he did it for free. He bought taps that he'd found in his garage. He gave me 3 options. The taps is quite an interesting story. He gave me 3 options: a brand new set of taps, which he'd bought just in case I wanted them, a set of taps that were the right taps, but they were secondhand, they were a bit rusty. He'd had them in the garden for a while. Or a set of taps that weren't rusty, but they were 2 hot taps. There wasn't a hot and a cold. So without looking at them, I made a little joke about getting fit again and getting in shape. And I said, let's put a spell in my ensuite. Let's do a double hot spell. Not only am I going to get hot again, it's going to be double hot. We had a little chuckle about that. He commented that I turn everything into a spell, which is true. And I said, well, go and fit those taps, but as you're fitting them and putting them in place, do a little intense spell as you're doing it to make my health come back and my fitness come back, a double hot spell. So I sent him off to sort that for me. Later, when I went up to look at what he'd done, there were swans on the taps. Swans for Bridget. I'd got my swans up there for Bridget and 2 swans on the tap. I couldn't believe it. I texted him saying, I cannot believe this. The spell is underway. He thinks I'm a bit crazy, but there you go. So reaching out for friends, my taps got fixed. My car went in for an MOT and was fine, so that was good as well. And I've had some friends gift me some decks as well this month, which I had the little Frida deck, which I've got upstairs, and also this crystals deck as well, which was just glorious. I've loved using this deck. Shown it a few times now already on my channel. Even though I've only just had it. Oh, look at that. I think with the stress levels I've got, the need for white space in my decks has kind of kicked in a little bit. I wanted something peaceful and calming. I've been sitting with crystals and holding my pebbles, and I had quite an experience at the altar, but that's for another video, holding a stone. But this deck has been comforting, it really has. And it's been a way for me to use crystals without the guilt of buying crystals, which I do feel. My magic garden is all about rewilding the earth and looking after our earth and making sure that my little piece of the earth is beautiful for wildlife and birds and insects, and all are welcome and all are fed. So the thought of then going into a shop and buying chunks of crystal, I wish I'd got a crystal collection already, but I don't. But this feels like a crystal collection now. So that was beautiful. That was gifted to me by a lovely friend. Talking about white space, the white sage tarot came through the post unexpectedly. I haven't used it yet. I wanted to do a walkthrough of it, but oh my goodness, this deck is comfort and peace and calm. Talk about decks coming to you at the right time. In a month of stress and hospital visits and COVID shots, And this card made me cry. If you've watched my videos before, you might remember it's my Hanged Man year. Time out, things from a different perspective. I think it's the tail end of lockdown, hopefully, where I'm removed from the world, where I need to sort my health out. And the fact that this is a caterpillar about to turn into a butterfly, it made me cry. I love it. So those were two decks that came through the post, which kind of link to March, my realisation that I needed more calm space, more quiet time, more white space, more calm, more peace, less anxiety, less stress, slower pace, let's slow it down. The books I read, for poetry, I read this one, Grief is the Thing with Feathers. It's by Max Porter. And I loved it. It's written from different perspectives. You've got a boy's perspective, dad's perspective, and a crow's perspective. So it goes through with kind of poetic prose and poems, and it follows two boys and a dad who have just unexpectedly had their mum die. The mum died unexpectedly. And this crow appears to kind of walk with them through the initial shock. And it's told from the three perspectives. I absolutely loved it. This is what the dad says as they're scattering the ashes. I love you, I love you, I love you. And up they went. The sense of a cloud, the failure of clouds, scientifically quick and visually hopeless. A murder of little burnt birds flecked against the grey sky, the grey sea, the white sun, and gone. And the boys were behind me, a tide wall of laughter and yelling, hugging my legs, tripping and grabbing, leaping, spinning, stumbling, roaring, shrieking, and the boys shouted, I love you, I love you, I love you. And their voice was the life and song of their mother, unfinished, beautiful, everything. So that's the first book I read in March. I loved it. Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. And then I carried on reading Tarot of the Spirit and the Lon Milo Duquette book. Both still ongoing, both study books, both going to take an age to work through because I've been working with both of these decks this month. So those have been ongoing as well. Both great books, I think. I really deep dived with two tarot books. So the True Heart Intuitive Tarot, I really studied this month. I really worked a lot with the guidebook and really tried to connect with this deck. I loved this guidebook, I really did. And also the Magician's deck, I've done a full read of this, which is wonderful. It's full colour. I am going to be sharing the Magician's deck in April, but I've already done a full study of the book and note taken, and I've done my first initial workings with the deck. It's a really interesting deck. So that's been read this month, and that's kind of it for books. There was no fiction this month, which I think needs to be part of my self-care for next month, to find some quiet white spaces to relax and read fiction, because there's a lot of knowledge going in here. I need some white space up here too. So for decks this month, of course, I'm carrying on working with the Weavers. This is my card which I pulled last new moon. So I've got to work with the bear, the dreamer of the primordial stories. She is a stone carrier. This card could not be more apt for me this month. So I'm meditating at the altar. I'm trying to meditate daily. I've kind of let that go a bit. So again, that's another way of bringing a bit of peace and quiet and calm in. But I'm still working with this one. The Weaver's Oracle it's just pure magic. I love it. And then, as I've said with the guidebook I've been reading, I've been working with the True Heart Intuitive Tarot by Rachel True. The artwork is by Stephanie Singleton. I didn't mention on my walkthrough, my deep dive review of this deck, about the artist. It's it's a little bit hidden away, her name. I wish that people wouldn't do that, because the art is such a huge part of the deck. And yes, it might be somebody's brainchild and they might have done all the words, but to draw 78 cards, even if somebody else is telling you what to draw, it deserves more than a tiny little mention that you have to search for. So that's the artist bugbear in me about deck creation. Having said that, this deck this month has been so lovely to work with. I love this deck. I love it. It's not overly expensive. If it is one you're thinking of getting, then I do have quite an in-depth review of this. I think it's one of my longest reviews I've done, which I'll link below. But it's lovely. It's really lovely to work with. It's just a really unusual, special deck. I paired it with a few decks actually. Firstly, I've been pairing it with my Animal Wisdom Tarot, which I hadn't really planned to work with at all this month, last month rather. I just got a call to work with it, and I kind of went with it, and I did a few readings by itself, and then I put it with the True Heart Tarot, and it worked really nicely. It gave some clear, concise readings. I love the art together. I think the art works beautifully together. I think the colour scale works together as well. It just worked. It really worked, as you can see as I'm pulling these cards. So that was a fun combo this month. Then I also tried pairing the True Heart Intuitive Tarot with my Osho Zen, because my Osho Zen, I kind of long for it if I haven't used it for a while. So it's never far away from where I'm pulling cards. And it is one that does tend to just talk with other decks. It's a really good deck for combining, and these worked well as well together. I've enjoyed these two decks. So this was the Intuitive Heart Tarot, the True Intuitive Heart Tarot with the Osho Zen. Very different art styles, but they still work together. A bit like two oddballs, if that makes sense, together, and it's been really great. So that's the Osho Zen with the True Heart Intuitive Tarot, which I always get the name wrong. Then another deck I wasn't planning to work with was my Forest of Enchantment Tarot, which again I love, but I haven't worked with it for a while. I had no intention of really pulling it this month, but I was on one of Jilly's lives, watching one of her lives, which I've been trying to watch a few more lives. My YouTube viewing has been very sporadic just because of time and just not feeling very well this month, so I haven't really watched as much as I've wanted. But I've tried to catch a couple of lives, and Jilly's being one of them over at Little Zen Crone, and I've joined in with some of the readings on that, and I just felt a pull to pull this deck. So I have used this deck a few times this month. You know, when you've got a deck that you love and you haven't used it for a while, and then you pull it out the box and you think, why have I not been using this more? So I look at that card. So this is a deck that has been out of the box in March and very much loved and appreciated during March. And then also these two decks still working through my Thoth, still working with Tarot of the Spirit, loving this so very much. It is so gorgeous to work with. It pairs gorgeous with the Thoth. I'll link a video below where I showed the two side by side. It really does. But I had a go at pairing, well, putting all three together with my mystical healing reading cards, which I haven't used. I haven't used a lot, to be honest, since I got them, and I was really glad that I did. You see the box here? These are the backs on these cards, and these paired together have also been fantastic. I've just really liked them together. This card has kept coming out for me a lot. Release fear. Don't you love it when the tarot speaks truth? So it was just an experiment, really, just to see whether it would work, and it really did. So I've been using the Thoth with the Tarot of the Spirit, and then pulling, say, one or two oracle cards just to clarify as I've seen fit. And then another surprise deck use this month. It was my middle daughter, Poppy. It was her parents' evening, all done by Zoom in the middle of the month, and she did amazingly well. But while we were waiting for Zoom calls to happen, it was only me and her in the house. While we were sat waiting, I said to her, why don't you run upstairs and get the tarot deck that I bought you for Christmas? Now, my daughter is fascinated with decks, but she doesn't particularly use tarot. What she uses is she's got some oracle decks, which she loves. But she's also a crazy Tolkien fan. She loves The Hobbit. She loves Lord of the Rings. So because of this idea that it's nice to get your first tarot deck gifted for you, although she's not yet into tarot, for Christmas, I treated her to the Hobbit tarot, which I think possibly out of print now. I know the prices are going up for this deck. But I found it on eBay and I bought it for her for Christmas. So she'd never used it. So I asked her to run upstairs and go and get it. And I threw out a reading on the table while we were waiting. So these are the backs. And I was absolutely blown away. It wouldn't look like the type of deck that I would enjoy working with on first sight, although I do love Tolkien as well, and I am a Lord of the Rings geek too, just like my daughter. The apple never falls far from the tree. But the artwork and the colour, the dark blue colours, not necessarily appealing to me, but I was blown away. I put one reading down on the table and sat back and thought, oh, okay, this deck likes to chat. This deck doesn't pull any punches. So I threw a second reading down on the table. I asked a different question and did a second 9-card reading, and it was the same thing all over again. It blew my mind. This deck, you want to have your ear talked off and you want to connect with some real strong magic, then this deck, I think if you're a bit of a wordsmith or you write yourself, which I do, I've always written, because this is linked to story, who knows, that might be where the magic grows. But this deck was really something else and I loved it. So that was another surprise deck. The Hobbit Tarot, which is a US Games deck. Then I did a few self-care readings with the Crow Tarot, which is again one that I don't use this very often apart from on my Morrigan altar. I use this often to talk with the Morrigan or to inspire poetry for the Morrigan. But I actually used it in some self-care readings this month. I love this deck. I love all my decks. I love them all. But this is fabulous if you work with the Morrigan, or if you work with Crow Energy. This is a goodie. Oh, and I've just remembered one more combination that I used, which I really loved. And we are going to go back to the crystal deck. And I combined it with archetype cards. And it was really, really interesting. These are the Caroline Mice archetype cards. They're not the Kim Kranz ones. I don't have those. These are the backs. These two working together. Really good. Really, really interesting. It gave me lots to think about. Now, my experience with this deck is spooky, to be honest. I think out of all the decks I own, this is the one that kind of freaks me out a little. Look how many cards are in there. And for a while I was pulling cards about past people in my life, and depending on who I was wanting advice about, the deck was throwing out the same cards. For one person, I got the same card 4 different times in 4 different readings. Same card came out, the vampire card. The vampire, and at one point I think is it the priest card in there? The 2 cards kept coming out together every time. And if the probability of that, I think, would probably, if I was a mathematician, which I'm not, and worked it out, I bet that would be quite interesting and quite startling, that the chance of that actually happening randomly. But I've loved these 2 together. Really interesting, really good pointers for daily advice. Unusual, I know, an archetype deck with a crystal deck, not your standard 3-card tarot spread, but really, really interesting to use. So if you have those 2 decks, if you have a crystal deck and an archetype deck, give it a go and let me know what you find, whether you think the advice that you get or the guidance that you're given is surprising and clear. And finally, some YouTube events that happened in March. 2 lives, one with the lovely Amber at Lavender Moon and one with Queen of Set over at Oyers Girl, which I'll link down below. So that was exciting to do. I also won a giveaway. I won a giveaway from Honey over at Fierce and Pretty, which is really exciting. So I'm waiting for posts from that, which is just, oh, I was just so excited. I also want to give a shout out for some newish channels. So Nancy at Paper Moon Tarot, I'm going to link her channel again. She has done some fantastic tags. She's relatively new. She did the Tarot on the Menu tag, which I did in March, and she's doing some great content. So if you haven't found Nancy's channel yet, I'll link it below. Another channel that's really new, and I don't think people have found yet, is Alan over at Oracular Mechanics. This is his channel name. He's got some amazing decks. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He is putting together some great videos, but I don't think people are finding him. So if you haven't found Alan yet, then I'm going to link his channel below. Go and say hi. He's doing some great content. Martha and Mr. Bones over at Mystical Empowerment, another new channel. She's got some great content going out. Fantastic. Another new channel. Go along, have a look, give them a subscribe, give them a hello. It's fantastic. I have loved Kelly Bear's lives in March. She's just started selling her jewellery and her tarot bag wraps on her Etsy shop. I'll put links in for that. That's been really exciting. I did a VR to Veronica Rose as well, so that's linked to YouTube with my Lego altars, which was fantastic fun. I also loved watching Brian over at Papa Squirrel and Jason from Tarot by the Pines put together their Oracle versus Tarot skit. If you haven't seen that, it's hysterical. I will link that down below as well. Another great thing to watch, which I really enjoyed, was Manuela's interview with Emily. So Manuela over at A Place of Stillness with talking to Emily from Emily's Tarot Magic. She's also got a second channel called Emily JCF Diamond. It was a really lovely interview and live where we got to know a little bit more about Emily. I love Manuela's channel as well. I'm going to put links to their conversation and all of their channels down below as well. I've also loved watching Jonathan Daly and his amazing crystal grid necklaces that he's making, which have blown my mind. So I'll put links to Jonathan as well. So there's been so much I've enjoyed watching on YouTube. I've been trying to get to a few more lives. I'm missing out on a lot of people's content. There's channels that I haven't got to for a while, just with the demands of life, and it does bother me that I can't get to people's videos as much as I would like. But I'm trying, because I just think everybody does. There's so much wonderful content out there, but I thought I'd give a shout out to some of those newer channels, because there's some brilliant content on them. And I forgot to mention my art. So the art for March was my Snow Moon painting, which is a watercolour with ink, which then became an idea for the Queen of Swords. I'm working on a moon deck at the minute, and this will be the Queen of Swords card for it. So there are a number of ideas I've got for different decks. My journeys with watercolour are built around my moon practice and following the moon throughout the year, and that's becoming a deck, which is really, really exciting. I was really blown away by the response to this painting, and it is an area that I'm not overly confident with. Painting of any sort is new to me. Art isn't, drawing isn't, textile tapestry and weaving and mixed media isn't new. Paint is new. So it's just been really supportive and wonderful and encouraging to get lovely responses to my artwork. So this was the work I did in the art studio in March. So that's it, guys. It's been a tricky month. It's been frightening at times with my health. It's been a wake-up call month for me, March. It's been full of magic. It's been full of birthdays. It's been full of challenge, but also full of joy and things to study and read and decks to play with and art to make. Isn't that just the way of life? Challenging in one second, joyous in another, and quiet bits in between. So I'm wishing you all a wonderful April, a journey into spring or into the darker months, depending on what hemisphere you're in, wherever you are in the world. I wish you peace and joy and calm and magic for your April to come. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys.